Okay, and we are live, and we have a good 5 minutes until church starts. So I'm just going to give us a few minutes for everybody to get here, for Emily to get the uh, link out for everybody to get on. And I'm going to change the elevation of this just a minute. So sorry about that. Okay, we got one person here. Good day to you all. I'll start with that. I'm not to see who's here. I am sitting differently on purpose because Sunday afternoon I sat, if you notice, I sat kind of corner. I feel like I was in a corner, like I was cornered where I wasn't totally on this couch that I usually sit on, and I kind of wasn't. And I had the background of the corner of the room. You could kind of see the end of the living room in the house. And hey, Drew. And let me tell y'all something. When I got up, I was sitting half on the couch and half on the wooden frame of the couch. And I felt like it looked okay, but I did preach a little long. I know the service went a little long. But when I got up and started to move my leg, I had sat on it so much. I don't know if it had gone to sleep or if it had I don't know, something happened. I just could not pull my leg behind me because of sitting on it in that way. And I had to walk around the house and limber up a little. So anyway, I'm going to try this much more comfortable position. I've yet to find the ideal place that I really like, as knowing I'm going to be sitting here a while. I'm going to be using my screen. I'm going to be talking and typing and typing to answer everybody's uh, questions and responses and all of that. And so I think I'm going to like this, like this. We're going to try this and see how this goes. My only fear of having it like this is me typing to y'all, which really I shouldn't be doing a lot of. But if you want to go ahead and turn to Hebrews 11 and Judges 14, that's where we're going to be today. So we're going to be talking about more about Samson and how the background of Samson. That's what we talked about the last two times. That Samson was born in a time period where the Philistines ruled, and we talked about the Philistines or Philistines, however you want to say it. We talked about the Philistines and their background, who they were. Then we talked about Samuel's background, and in both of those lessons, we talked about the angel that came to Samson's family. And hey, Rhonda, hello, Rob. She says, I always Ron, you're just so happy. I just hear your cheerful voice saying hello, Rob, and your smile. That see, it brightens me up. Of course, she put two smiley faces here, so always good to have Rhonda with us. And got Drew, we got Rhonda. Emily is here. She is putting this on the link to get everybody else here. And because she just said from the hall that she has shared it. So, and and let me say this: if you can't find this link, all you got to do is go to. I was worried about people not getting here to the link until I figured out. Really, all you got to do is get on YouTube and search Dovertown Church of Christ in the search bar, and our icon with the red rose. And I suppose we're the only Dovertown Church of Christ. I suppose this is the only Dovertown that I know of. I don't know of another community with that name anywhere in the United States, and I don't know there. I don't know if there is a Dovertown in Great Britain either. I believe that is an English name, but I don't believe there is a Dovertown anywhere. I've never heard of one. So, still waiting on people to get here. A lot of people will see that name and say Doverton. I don't know why they miss that W. It's Dovertown, and it's town with Dover in front of it. Dovertown. And named incidentally after my great grandfather, Nicodemus Dover. Little history lesson. Who built some houses, moved a sawmill from Winston County to Walker County, Alabama, and set up in this north central Alabama, and had some houses. And the story I was told was when the grocery boys would deliver to that section from town, Cordova town, they called it Dover's Houses, and it morphed into Dover Town, and that was where the name came from. So there's a free history lesson on that, if anybody was ever interested. And I have a picture of him actually, but I've seen a picture of him with his sawmill. My dad was telling me about his sawmill just last night, and no, not before last, maybe. Anyway, we were talking about it was Monday night. He was telling me about this sawmill that he brought that got our community started and would move it to places to have a location near the mines so that people could build their houses. And he had some houses and rented them out, a very business minded person. So, and we have my angel of a wife. Absolutely. You put that halo of that head because you are my angel. ESG 1977. She is here with us. And we have 10 people in the place listening. So this is really good. This is really good. I'm excited to talk about Samson tonight. And we will probably have a few more. I understand that last week, the YouTube, something was not going smoothly on their part. Several people said they couldn't get in that thought they were in, and something happened there. That just happens, that technical difficulties happen with, everything we try. So let's just go on now and let's just begin our lesson. We'll talk about Samson. How true the statement is in Hebrews chapter 11, where we come to Samson's name, way down in the end, after we've talked about so many others, where we see the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson, and then some more after him. But talking about a long story where you have a background to build, Samson is one of those stories. We've built the background for kind of getting the setting, the Philistines and all. Then we've built the background for him. And now we come to him. So let's go to Judges chapter 14. And I'm not on the page that has the little chat box. So I want to read Judges chapter 14. Then when I get back, if any more have joined, I will personally welcome you to our Bible study. So let's look at Judges chapter 14. At the top of this chapter, we have the title Samson's Philistine Wife. And we read, Now Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. So he went up and told his father and mother, saying, I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me as a wife. Then his father and mother said to him, is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among all my people, that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she pleases me well. But his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Now, to his surprise, a young lion came roaring against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore the lion apart as one would have torn apart a young goat, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. After some time, when he returned to get her, he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the carcass of the lion. He took some of it in his hand and went along eating. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them. They also ate. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson gave a feast there, for young men used to do so. And it happened when they saw him that they brought 30 companions to be with him. Then Samson said to them, let me pose a riddle to you. If you can correctly solve and explain it to me within the 7 days of the feast, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. But if you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. They said to him, pose your riddle, that we may hear it. So he said to them, out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. Now for 3 days they could not explain the riddle. But it came to pass on the seventh day that they said to Samson's wife, entice your husband, that he may explain the riddle to us, or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us in order to take what is ours? Is that not so? Then Samson's wife wept on him and said, you only hate me. You do not love me. You have posed a riddle to the sons of my people, but you have not explained it to me. And he said to her, look, I have not explained it to my father or my mother, so should I explain it to you? Now she had wept on him the 7 days while their feast lasted. And it happened on the seventh day that he told her, because she pressed him so much. Then she explained the riddle to the sons of her people. So the men of the city said to him on the seventh day before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men, took their apparel, and gave the changes of clothing to those who explained the riddle. So his anger was aroused, and he went back up to his father's house. And Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. And that's the end of the chapter. And so the soap opera starts. Whew. Well, let's go and see who's come in on the chat. Cookie is here and Wendy is here. Hello to you both. And Emily, it was like worldwide. I was upset. I thought it was me having difficulty, but I did get on. Oh, okay, yeah, I get you. This problem was worldwide. Okay, and that happens too. I'm gonna guess we're talking about yesterday. We're gonna talk about last week's Wednesday study. Okay, when everyone couldn't nobody get on YouTube, so the problem was worldwide. The problem looks solved now, and we've got a good bunch of us here. So let's talk about Samson and this story of Samson. And the first problem that we have is him going and looking at the daughters of the Philistines. Now, before we really get on to Samson for this, because, like I say, it's something I want to keep in our mind when we talk about Bible characters. We need to talk about them like we're going to see them one day, because Samson is listed in this Hall of Fame of the Faithful. I do believe we shall spend an eternity with him in heaven if we so live that we make it to that wonderful place. And thinking of that makes me really careful about what I say about these Bible characters, and I hope it does you too. But here's a problem we cannot ignore. There was a problem with him and this woman of Timnah, whose name's not given here. And again, verse 4, his father and mother did not know that this was of the Lord. He was looking for this as an occasion to move against the Philistines. So before we get on to Samson too much, remember, this was God's will. Samson, oh, as we would say, a red-blooded male. I almost said a red-blooded American male. He was not American, was he? But just a normal male human being saw a woman that he liked, and it pleased him to see her, so to the extent that he wanted her. Now, remember that God can make people find favor in each other. He did this with Moses. But we see this on another end of the spectrum, where a woman in the Bible pleased a king, a biblical king, to the extent that he married her. Here is our first trivia question. Who am I talking about? What woman in the Bible was so beautiful that she pleased a king? Elizabeth's here. Hey, Elizabeth. So this woman pleased a king, and he married her, and then she saved God's people. Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, we have another woman who pleased a king here with Cookie brought up a good point. David, of course, Bathsheba pleased this king, and he married her. But this one saved her people, and Angie got it. It is Esther. Yes. Uh, Now Bathsheba pleased David outside of God's arranging it, and what David did displeased the Lord. But the Lord arranged it where Esther pleased the king. And in the whole book of Esther, you don't see miracle number one, but you see God's providence working. That's a very interesting thing about Esther. It's a book that seems to be without miracles, with the exception perhaps of when the king could not. Well, that's still providence. I'm gonna say when the king couldn't sleep, and they read to him that about Mordecai. But you just don't see the miraculous being in Esther. But God made Esther so beautiful that she pleased the king, and that was on purpose to get the king to love her. It looks as if the same sort of working is going on between Samson and this woman of Timnah, because as we read, this was of the Lord, verse 4. He was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. And so I don't look at Samson in a critical view of this, because this was the working of the Lord. Usually, though, otherwise, and here, God who makes the laws can make exceptions to the laws, of course. God who makes the laws of nature made exception to the laws of nature. For example, when Jesus healed many people instantly, you know, God who made the law can go above and beyond the law. God who made the law that bound people to marry within their own people is the same God who loosed the law here. Now, if you look at Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 3 through 4, you will see that the Israelites were forbidden to intermarry with the Canaanites. Now, that now the Canaanites and the Philistines were two different people, absolutely. But now that could have been equally applicable to these. God wanted them to marry within themselves, as seems to be evidenced by what his father says, what Samson's father says. Are there no people among here that you could marry? And first thing he says, is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren or among all my people that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? Remember, the Jews were circumcised. That was their symbol that they were with God, of God. And this woman would have come from this uncircumcised group of people, the Philistines. Look at Samson's reply to this. And this does say, I'm hesitant to say this says a lot about his character because, again, this was the working of the Lord. It could have been an urge that the Lord put in him, but he will not take no for an answer. I will say this in his character, in this, the reason that he gives is this: she pleases me well. Now he had, as far as we know, he had not had any physical relations with her. This would seem to be talking about her looks. She looked good to him. She was one that pleased his eyes. Now, this is ironic, though, because what happened, and let's put this out as a question: what later happened from another woman that pleased Samson well concerning his eyes? This is quite ironic. This she pleases me well. So if you're at home, turn and talk about this, and if you're on the chat, see what you can put in here. What happened in the end to Samson's eyes that caused these women to please him so well? This is an ironic. I don't want to say foreshadowing, but kind of like a foreshadowing. What happened to Samson's eyes because of a woman? So this is our question. He said, she pleases me well. Well, what later happened to these eyes that saw these women and pleased him very much? So I'm going to wait for some answers. And of course, I know this is getting ahead in the story, but I'm assuming a lot of us know the story. All right. They cut his hair. The barbers snapped his hair, and they burned his eyes out, and then he lost his strength. That's right. Thank you, Cookie. Uh, his eyes pleased him also with another woman later, and her name was Delilah, and they put his eyes out. Of course, I had to cut his hair first. That was his strength. But let's look at the rest of this chapter now. And get her for me. She pleases me well. Verse 3. And his father and mother, though, didn't know. And this could mean something else, too. Some have said this. Here's another way we could interpret this. This being uh, of the Lord doesn't necessarily even mean that he approved of a marriage that he earlier had said either, but that he could have overruled Samson's strong-headed determination to marry this woman, and turned it to be that way. I just want to go with what the scripture says, and that is this: his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord, that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. Whether God did or did not approve of this marriage, it didn't really matter, because in the end, we see the end of this chapter, he didn't get to be with this woman. I'll get to that in just a minute. But the Philistines had dominion over Israel, and if you remember, Samson was to begin this deliverance from Israel, and that was to be his lot in life. And they had rule over Israel. And looking at this, where she was from, Timnah, it looks like if you go to Joshua chapter 15, verse 10, in this area, about the borders, the border turned about from Bala westward to Mount Seir and continued to the slope of Mount Jearim on the north, that is Chesalon, and went down to Beth Shemesh and continued through Timnah. It looks as if when they came into this land, this city that this woman was from was originally an Israelite city. But apparently the Philistines had control over it. They must have taken it over. And it looks like, from archaeological evidence, I read that the amount of trade between Israel and the Philistines here near the sea, these two peoples, there was a lot of trade during this time, the time of the judges, and the Philistines had control of this. Now let's go to verses 5 through 9, where Samson kills this lion. And the picture here has enough of a time frame that he meets this lion, and the Spirit of God comes on him so mightily that he kills it as easily as he could have killed a goat without any weapons. And when he kills it and apparently slings it down on the road there, he doesn't tell anybody. And he goes down and he talks with this woman, visits his girlfriend. And when he comes back to get her during this time period, there's enough time period between him visiting her and him going back. And we got to remember these time periods in the Bible, that time has to pass. Whereas we can just say he went, then he went back, and the bees were in the carcass, etc. That there's enough time period for the bees to set up a hive, swarm there of all the places. Very interesting choice. Of course, bees can get into many things. I remember one time them getting to the walls of our house when I was little. They can get into several places like that. And they got into this lion carcass, and there was a swarm of bees, and they'd even made honey. And I want you to notice something he does that he shouldn't have done. He took and ate the honey. Now, I can't think of this except thinking of how nasty it is to reach into a dead lion. I don't care. I know honey is supposed to be this substance that doesn't let any kind of germs live in it, and bacteria doesn't get to grow in it, and yada, yada, yada. But I just do not want to stick my hands into a dead lion and get anything and eat it. Now, that's just me. But Samson was the man's man, and this didn't bother him, so he did. And he even takes it to his father and mother and gives it to them. And they ate it. But look at this. He did not tell them that this came out of a dead lion. And he didn't even tell them about the lion. And this, of course, with the time needed for them to make the honey and have honey, set up a hive, we're talking about weeks, maybe even months could have elapsed before this wedding feast and him getting this riddle. After a while here, it could be a long period of time. But anyway, looking at this young lion, a young lion, somewhere a young lion could be. Uh, I'm told between a cub and a full-grown lion, but it had to have been something powerful because it was the spirit of the Lord that helped him to defeat this lion, and it said he rent him that as he would have a kid. Now, let me tell you what Josephus says about this, and it's a little different, but it doesn't necessarily contradict. Josephus said that Samson strangled the lion, as you could picture that would be the death of an animal, and if you had the power to get this beast in some sort of, what would you call it, a choke hold, and choke it to death. And that's not contradictory. He could have done both. He could have killed it and then just in his release of energy and anger and everything, ripped the thing to shreds. He definitely could have done thing. We have this bit of superhuman strength because the Spirit of God was upon him. This is the first thing we read that Samson did. Uh, More significant so because he didn't have anything in his hand when he killed this lion, no weapons except his bare hands. And it could also be that there's a number of trips from where he was going down to Timnah, and it's on one of these that his father and mother would be going, probably making marriage arrangements for their son, who wouldn't have it any other way but to get this woman now. And and again, this was of the Lord. But uh, apparently, here he turns aside to see this lion carcass. He sees this honey, and uh, apparently, without his parents right there by it, because they didn't know that it came from the lion's mouth, he could have traveled much faster than they did, being younger, stronger, you know, going to the line, getting back with his parents, going to and fro. But anyway, he goes down, and again, it mentions that this woman pleases Samson well, verse 7, and looks at if before this he'd only seen her, and now he has an opportunity to talk with her, and he's continually pleased with his choice of this woman. Now, he gets them honey, they eat it. Now, here's the problem with this. What, let's do a little bit of review. What was the Nazarite law concerning Samson? Let's just go over all of what they were again. What was the Nazarites' laws that they had to do when they took their vows? Okay, so let's see if we can put up here what the Nazarites are. There are several things. So what this is your, and if you're at home, turn and talk. I feel a little sneeze coming on. Maybe it won't. Anyway, turn and talk, and if you'd like to share it, what were the Nazarite vow rules? What were the rules of this Nazarite vow that Samson was under for life? Some people would take it for life. Some would take it for, a few months or however long they'd take it. But let's see what answers we get. Can you name some of the things that had to do with the Nazarite vow? Okay, Rhonda has. No razor shall come upon his head, drink no wine or similar drink, eat nothing unclean. All right, that's good. Let's keep going on that line. Those are all true. And there's more to it too. There's something else too. Very good, Rhonda. All right, no razor shall come upon his head. So we'll see Samson's hair being very long. No razor shall come upon his head. Uh, we'll see drink no wine or similar drink, which meant vinegar or anything to do with the grape. Nothing from the vine at all, from the leaf to anything. He couldn't eat anything. He couldn't eat anything. Of course, and none of them were supposed to eat. Excuse me. None of them were supposed to eat anything unclean. What else? There's something else that was with the Nazarite vow. My cord came off. Let me put that back on. There's something we need. All right. Elizabeth says they can't go near a dead body. All right. Now, this one, and I was going to ask which one of these. All right. Did Cookie? Is a live carcass unclean? I love it. Ooh, would we say just a little bit? Can't go near a dead body. He goes near an unclean dead body. They couldn't eat a lion. It was not in the dietary restrictions, and he not only eats from this lion, he touches it. He gets honey from it. They were not supposed to do this. Now, one of these rules he broke later on in this chapter. Which one of these rules? No razor, no strong drink, no dead body, nothing unclean. Which one of these rules did he break a second time in this chapter? He broke one of his Nazarite vows. What is another rule Samson broke under the Nazarite vow in this chapter besides touching that line? Did you catch anything else that we read in this chapter that he broke a Nazarite vow? What else did Samson do in this chapter that we just read that also was breaking that Nazarite vow? Scan that chapter and you'll see something else that Samson did that broke his Nazarite vow. If this were a TV show, this would be where I would say, while we hear a word from our sponsor, and we'd go to a commercial while people are looking this up, then we could come back and hear. But I don't have such sponsorship as that, so we'll just sit here in silence while we wait. And if you're at home, talk about this. There's another rule. If you'll look through that chapter that Samson broke that went against his Nazarite vow. And what was that? Maybe I need to give you the verse to look at. Well, just look for it. You look for it. You can find it. Yeah, Angie, thank you. He killed 30 Ashkelon men and took their clothing. Now, it can be presumed that he took their clothing after they were dead. He's supposed to not be near any dead body, even your next of kin, even like a father, mother, brother, wife, nobody's husband, nobody. Because a woman could take this vow too. He kills these men. There's 30 dead bodies he's touched. So I guess we could say not a second time, the third, the 31st time after he gets the 30 men and kills them and takes their clothing. So he did not follow this vow he was supposed to be following. That's just the fact of it. He didn't follow his vow. He kills 30 men. He takes their clothing, and I just have the picture of him taking the clothing after they're dead, uh, because I don't know. Well, he was strong enough. I mean, he could have taken it off of them and then killed them, but it says here in verse 19, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men, took their apparel, and gave the changes of clothing to those who explain the riddle. This looks to be a time sequence to me, does it not to you? Uh, Killed, took, and gave. Looks to be in that order. So he could have just killed them all, and after he killed, and I would imagine it would have to be somewhat him getting them all killed and then getting the clothes off them after they're all killed. But that was breaking that Nazarite vow that he took. So here we are at this riddle that he has come up with. And I like the way the New King James makes this rhyme. It is very difficult when you translate from one language to another to translate a civilization's poetry. Because what you've got when you have poetry is not just a meaning, but a meaning that is to be written in the language, playing with the language, making it beautifully sounding in the language. And so poetry and music, of course, lyrics, poetry, which are different. Lyrics were set to music, poetry meant to be read. Uh, when you have this, you have a difficult task ahead of you to translate. For example, Martin Luther's hymn, A Mighty Fortress, we sing that at church. And to translate that from German into English and keep a rhythm of poetry was quite a feat. But I remember when I was in Vienna, we went to a service, and the service was conducted in German, and they sang this song, A Mighty Fortress. And in my opinion, it was more beautiful in the original German because I was listening for the rhythms of the words and how they sounded. Although it's very beautiful in English as well, it is extremely beautiful when sung in German. And you could probably find it online somewhere sung in German, but I just thought it was really beautiful. But the New King James translators translate this like this: out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. That is very beautifully put, I must say. That is very poetical. And if you're looking at this in the Old King James, you would say you would see this: out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness, which has a rhythm to it. We would call that prose. But to me, the New King James Version has this so much more poetical in that they made the words rhyme, and that's your challenge: is making the words mean the same, but also make them rhyme. And so here it is: out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. Now, he makes this bet with them, and I don't know what more to call it than a bet. Uh, when they go down here to this woman, and in verse 10, this was at least the third trip, at least, that they've made. And they have this feast that lasts 7 days, and it would be a attended by a large company. But let me say this: some people have noted that for this type of a feast in this day and time would tell us something about Samson's family that we kind of forget, and that was, or don't think about, maybe have never thought of, and that was that this indicates that Samson's family was a family of wealth and position. They would have had money to have done this 7 day feast, and they would have had a position of power themselves. And many times the socioeconomic status, we call it today, or how rich or how poor someone is not brought about in the Bible. But you can see several clues that say that they were. Sometimes, like in the story of the rich man and Lazarus, he's called a rich man. He has a gate, he has a table, fine linen. He lives well every day. Lazarus is poor. It's definitely brought out there, but not every place do we see that. But we do see that Samson's family was one that gives this feast that lasts 7 days and has apparently a large company of people, because we have 30 companions are come. Looks like it says they brought 30 companions here. The they here would seem to be the parents of the bride or her family. And the custom of the type, these would be called, what we read later on in Matthew, the children of the bride chamber. And Matthew 9, verse 15, uh, Jesus said to them, the attendants of a bridegroom cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, can they? But the days will come when the bridegroom's taken away from them, and then they will fast, in Matthew 9:15. And these would have been invited. Samson had no companions with him. And it looks as if also the parents or relatives, whatever, of the bride have also put up this feast. And they were putting on this big feast. And if there's a custom was then for Samson's family to pay for it, maybe this woman's family was taking advantage of their hospitality, bringing 30 people. Anyway, they bring 30 people. That's a lot to bring, isn't it, to a wedding feast? And I guess, there as we do today, people, they ate as we do today. And, I'm going to be honest, I remember when my sister got married, uh, one woman was wondering, we're kind of wondering who, who she was. And my mother asked her and found out it was somebody's sister to somebody, I don't know. And the lady asked mother, "Who are you?" And mother said, "I'm the mother of the bride." And mother said, "I wanted to say the one who's paying for this food that you're eating." And the lady said, "Oh, okay," and just turned and started talking to the next person to her, as if, well, okay, I'm here for the food. But these people brought 30 companions with them to be with Samuel. And so he gives them this riddle, and out of the eater came forth sweetness. I'm sorry, out of the eater came forth food, out of the strong came forth sweetness, though King James says. And here they could not answer this riddle. And it looks like here's a lesson for Samuel to learn. There's not any evidence that he paid attention to it, because he goes and does something like this again. But he gives them these days to find this riddle. And uh, what these young men did during this time, you have to kind of, I don't want to say read between the lines, but I do too. For 3 days, they couldn't explain the riddle. And so you kind of have to read between the lines that he's not telling them, that they're trying to figure it out. And the bet is, if you can't get it, you've got to give me 30 linen garments. Now, why he chose that, I don't know. If he was a strong man, and we picture him to be this man of strength. I've heard preachers say, now Samson's strength was not in his muscles. I've heard preachers say that we picture Samson as a muscular being, and that is a good point. His strength was not in his muscles. It was in God, and it could be that Samson looked just like a regular person, and they couldn't figure out his strength. And the problem was that they were trying to figure it out. But we get the picture. He loves women. Apparently, I don't know what to say. He loves clothes too. He wants 30 new outfits. Now, I don't know if I have 30 outfits today. Coming, oh, I might. I don't know. I might could put together 30. No, I could. I know I couldn't. Samson wants 30 linen garments, and I'm going to guess this to be like their robes, 30, because it's 30 changes of clothing. So Samson liked clothes, apparently. Why he chose that, except for that was something he wanted, and that was a sign of status. And he would have gotten it if they hadn't cheated. And so he had to give it to them, or they had to give it to him. So anyway, they can't explain it for 3 days. They're just, racking their brains trying to explain this. And they come to her and tell her what they tell her is worse than, his giving them the riddle. Uh, that they tell her, you either find out this riddle for us, or we are going to burn you. Not only you, your father's house. So this is how wicked these Philistines were. Can you imagine somebody saying that? Well, sure we can. People are wicked like that today. We're going to burn you now, and your father's house with fire. And then they accuse her, have you purposely done this so that you can take what is ours? And then look at this. Is that not so? Is this not the reason? How bullyish they are to her, and how just like an interrogation going on. Is this why you invited us to do this? Is this not true? Uh, and naturally, verse 16, she's going to weep on him. She is put between a rock and a hard place. The person I feel sorry for in this story is her, because now she has to do what she can to get him to tell her this riddle. She doesn't know Samson that well. And so she cries. Now, I know many, when heard of and known of many women to get their way through crying. I've heard of women getting out of traffic tickets by crying. And this is what she does. Samson's wife wept on him. And then she uses her psychology. You hate me, because if you really loved me, you'd have told me this riddle. Now, how's Samson going to answer that? You've posed a riddle to the sons of my people, but you not even explain it to me. Actually, Samson gives her a good answer. Look, I didn't tell my father and mother. Why should I tell you? I grew up with them. They're my flesh and blood. They're my father. They're my mother. And I just really, truth be told, just met you. And you've not even been my wife yet. You please me, but why should I explain it to you? And she continues to do this. We see a lot of persistent women in the Bible, don't we? Women who persisted in getting what they wanted, just like his first, uh, almost to be wife here. Can you think of any other women? Let's do another Bible trivia. Can you think of any other women in the Bible who were persistent in getting what they wanted from a man? Can we think of any other women in the Bible who were persistent in getting what they wanted from a man, like she did day after day after day? Okay, we have Jezebel. She was a very persistent woman. Who else could we name? We're not naming, we, we're not all the time naming the godly women of the Bible, really. But now, Eve didn't have to be persistent. I tell you what, it looks like Adam just almost said, Okay, because he gave it. He was there with her. Adam, if you notice that where it says Adam and Eve, you look at that. He gave it. She gave it to her husband with her, who was with her. Uh, she didn't have to be as persistent as some of these. Now he should have said no, and I guess if he had, we don't know how persistent. All right, here's Bathsheba was up there, but even Bathsheba and Eve, and even Jezebel wasn't persistent as some of these uh, women. Okay, we have Herodias. This, when John the Baptist said, was brought in on a platter. That was audacious. Some women in the Bible kept on and on and on trying to get things, would not give up until they got what they wanted. Can you think of some of those women? I'm thinking of two right now that we've not named, uh, who kept on and kept on. If you're at home, turn and talk about this. Who are some women who kept on day in and day out getting what, trying to get what they wanted? I have no answers, which may mean I need to give you some hints. But let me see if you can think about some women. The nagging one, the nagging woman in the corner of that a cookie. That's good. That's just good. That wasn't who I was thinking about. The nagging woman. Better to live. I hope Ray Gerganis is watching this, because sometimes he would say that verse. Better to live in the corner of a rooftop than with a contentious woman. I remember him saying that. That is a proverb. Who is the one? This is from Elizabeth. Who is the one that bribed someone to be with her? Can't think of the name, but you are on the story that I am talking about, Elizabeth. You sure are. You're on the right track. Let's see if we can answer. Who was the one who tried to get someone to be with her? Jason said Hannah. Hannah was persistent in something good. This is a case of good persistence where she prayed and prayed for a son, and that's good persistence. So I'm not going to cast these women in a bad light, all of them, because Hannah was definitely persistent in doing something good, and that was her prayers. But let me give you the name of the man, and you see if you can come up with the woman. Oh, never mind. Somebody just did. Potiphar's wife, Jason said. That is exactly who came to him day in and day out and said, lie with me, lie with me. She came to Joseph just like this woman of Timnah and said, lie with me, lie with me. And she didn't just do it once. Um, in fact, let me just go to Genesis chapter 39, verse 6. The last of that verse we read, now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. So we have what we might say today a good looking dude. His face, his form, his appearance, his uh, figure. I guess I don't know what word you'd say. I guess a guy has a figure, you could say. The shape of his body, his form, his appearance, his countenance, everything was uh, was really, he was a nice looking man. And in verse 7, we see it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, lie with me. Now he says no, summing it up with, how can I sin against God? But look at verse 10 of Genesis 39. So it was as she spoke to Joseph day by day that he did not heed her. And so she does this day by day, and he doesn't give in. And she, of course, finally sets up a trap for him. And when he still does not give in, that he he gets blamed for something he didn't do. Anyway, uh, that was what I was thinking about. It was Genesis 39, Potiphar's wife. But there's someone else in who else in Samson's life after this woman from Timnah begged him day by day, kept at him day by day to do something. Someone else in Samson's life begged him day by day. A woman. And this woman was successful. She did get what she wanted. Potiphar's wife didn't get what she wanted. And I always wondered what happened to her after Joseph was placed over her husband. You know, I bet if she was smart, she would keep quiet and keep hidden behind the scenes. And we're not told what happened with her, but I'll say this: if she was smart, she certainly kept kept in her little turtle shell, because after she lied on him and had him put in prison. Okay. Yes, Rachel was another one persistent in prayers, wasn't she? And that's a good kind of persistent. If we're going to be persistent to God, men and women. Even though, remember, Moses was persistent in trying to get through to the promised land, and God said, no, don't ask again, because he was going to die on Mount Nebo. But somebody in Samson's life later on was very persistent. We've already talked about her earlier tonight. I was thinking this would be an easy one. I wonder how many people are shouting at the screen the name of this woman who persisted. Thank you, Elizabeth. Delilah. Yes, Samson and Delilah. And she was very persistent. This woman of Timnah, whose name is not given here, is very persistent. And she wept on him the 7 days while the feast lasted. Now, that had to get old too. This is supposed to be a joyous time. And I wonder, and I don't know how intelligent Samson was, but I wonder if we see the whole story, and we may wonder, and I wonder why he didn't see that this was why she was doing this. Has someone told you to try to find this out? Anyway, he didn't. And so on the seventh day, he told her because she pressed him so much. And so she goes right then and tells the riddle to his people, just like Delilah goes straight to the people and tells them that if you want him not to be strong, go cut his hair. But anyway, they come with the answer: what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? And his answer: if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. Now, you can tell Samson is angry. He knew instantly what had happened because he had to fulfill his promise. That would have been death to him and his family. And, of course, we talk about him being a man without integrity. He did have enough integrity to go and fulfill his promise, even though this meant going and killing somebody. It was the will of the Lord. The Lord was dispossessing the Philistines. He was to begin to get rid of this wicked group of people. And so before we point fingers at Samson for killing them, let's remember that some of them had said they were going to kill one of their own people and her whole family. And so he goes and he kills 30 people in Ashkelon, one of the big five of the Philistine cities that we talked about 2 weeks ago. The southernmost part of their territory, near the Mediterranean Sea, is this city called Ashkelon, and uh, it kept that name Ashkelon actually for a long time. But there's there's a type of onion, and I don't know the difference in the onions because really I'm allergic to onions. But a shallot or shallot, I don't know how you say that. That kind of onion actually came from, supposed to have come from this city, Ashkelon, eschalot, a shallot. If you eat shallots, if you like those, then you're eating something that was supposed to have originated here around the city of Ashkelon. So there's a little bit of trivia for you that I thought you might enjoy. But killing 30 Philistines would uh, be something that begins his feud with the Philistines, of course. And he goes, he kills them. We don't know a lot about Samson in this marriage. And some people ask, do you know if he consummated this marriage or not? Some say on the first day of the wedding feast would have been the consummation, and he would have consummated it there. Uh, some others say that he rushed away without consummating this marriage and leaving it unconsummated uh, because of what all happened between the bride and her family and all of this with the 30 changes of clothing. But it, it says it says here he goes and he kills these people. His anger burned. It says he goes up to his father's house. He goes there. It could have been so mad he doesn't want to go with her. This is sad. He rushes away to his father's house. Maybe that he never intended to go back. At least that's the way they seem to interpret it because they give his wife to be, fiance, to his best man. You know, there's always these stories about the wedding going on with uh the wedding going on with the best man stealing the bride or the maid of honor and all kinds of things you hear today. This was going on back in ancient times too. I mean, here's his best man getting the bride, and that's what happened. So his anger was aroused. He went back to his father's house. His wife was given to, it says, his companion. And uh, we're going to see more of this in the next chapter because they they give her away. It was actually her father who does it, and tries to give her the younger sister. I don't want to get into all the second part of this because that's in chapter 15. But this soap opera starts here. And like I say, soap opera is just like something in a soap opera where this person goes with this person, but they get that person, and all this kind of stuff. So, anyway, uh, the Philistines did not honor this marriage tie. That was very clear. They were a vicious and a ruthless people. We see more of their character here and how they threatened to burn this house. Later on, we're going to actually see that carried out, I'm afraid. And trying to cheat to get this riddle, the treachery, falsehood to reach their objectives. And the whole thing is, though, we also see Samson. I think Samson should have said, that's all I'm going to do with these Philistines. But he'll go back after this one. But anyway, we'll see Delilah. We'll see more of Samson's downfall. He let his downfall be the women he chose to marry. But then again, we cannot forget this was the hand of the Lord in this. We see the hand of the Lord playing a part in people's marriage. I believe it was Hosea who was told to marry Gomer, the prostitute. You know, the Lord did this as an illustration, just like it looks like here. The Lord is doing this with this Philistine woman to illustrate something, to make an illustration. So there's the beginning of Samson's saga. As the Hebrews writer said, time will not permit me to tell. And so here's the first part of it. He gets this woman. He poses a riddle because of what happens with this lion. And let me say this. There's also a movement about, and if you read the story of Gilgamesh, who is a giant, who does kill a lion, who people say, well, this is where the Bible got it from. And I just believe that is so ridiculous. It's just like the same thing I was reading the other day about Gilgamesh. Uh, I was looking, and I'd like to read more on the story of Gilgamesh. He also wrestled a man, and so people said this is where Moses got the idea for Jacob wrestling the angel. And I thought about that, exactly what I think about Samson and the lion, and then later David with the lion versus Gilgamesh and the lion, and Gilgamesh and the wrestling match. We're in ancient times. Were there not lions around everywhere? Cannot two people kill a lion? There were wrestling matches everywhere. It's considered the world's oldest sport. Before we invented any kind of football, basketball, or any ball, we just had each other. We'd wrestle. Uh, can two men not wrestle in one part of the world and two other men not wrestle each other in another part of the world? Really, it's ridiculous. These people who claim, oh, the Bible didn't originate with that, they got it from some other ancient source, ancient text. Now, that just really uh, infuriates me to think that just because somewhere else it was written, that was where they got it from, or that was where it came from. Like two events couldn't happen. And from what I've read, sources believe Gilgamesh to be a real live historical character, a king who was giant in size. Well, that's not impossible. I believe Goliath could have killed a lion if he wanted to, or one of his brothers could have killed a lion if they wanted to. It was not impossible to kill a lion, especially if you're so large, like Gilgamesh was purported to be, and then we have Goliath and his brothers. It's not impossible, maybe not an everyday occurrence, but not impossible to kill a lion. And why couldn't Samson, especially if he had the Lord with him, kill a lion? And why couldn't David kill a lion? And so anyway, I do not appreciate skeptics trying to stretch things out to try to make things fit a belief just because it's in two ancient texts. One had to copy it from another. To me, that's like saying somebody killed a lion today, so they must have copied the idea from someone 200 or 300 years ago, or by saying so and so and so and so wrestled today, and somebody saying, "Oh, they got that idea from a wrestling match 150 years ago." Now, really, that it just doesn't make sense. So, I wanted to say that because you do meet all kinds of skeptics and people who don't believe the Bible and trying to make it stretch to fit, what they think the Bible came from. Okay, Elizabeth says there is still another story I can't get. Have to ask Sunday. Who is the one that bribed someone to be with her? I wonder, maybe are you thinking about Delilah, Elizabeth? Because she certainly kept it Samson. But I hope if that is somebody that you've thought about, that you find out who it is you're thinking about. And we'll try to find out. We can share it in next week's lesson. This is all we have time for today. In fact, we went a little bit over, but studying the Bible. I love to do. I love to talk about it. Love to be with you about it and hear you talk about it in the chat box and hear the comments that some of you say. I appreciate the phone calls some of y'all give telling me that you're listening. I appreciate they can ask God on Judgment Day. That's true. I guess that's true. I guess we'll be able to ask him things. If we can, we sure can. And we could find out then. And uh, if we're so happy, if we're so, is it Delilah Elizabeth? Okay. Yes, it was Delilah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, we figured that out. Uh, so, anyway, this is all we have time for, a little over the time. And thank you, everybody, for joining us, staying with us. And we're going to end this now with a few announcements. Let's, if you can, come on Saturday. I'm sorry, come on Sunday at 11 o'clock to our building. We will have our worship there. Then we'll meet back here on YouTube channel for our afternoon service at 2 o'clock. But thank you all for joining us. Just remember, everybody on our prayer list, you can see those on our Facebook page. Or and I guess that's all I can think about to say right now. So have a good week. Hope God blesses you. And until next time, goodbye.